And welcome, Hoosier Nation, to our 55th episode of the Hoosier Sound, where our show has one main goal to give you our perspective of IU sports from the point of view as a student or young adult. In addition, we will also give our view on hot takes from around the world of sports. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Tuesday evening, September 25th, where I am your host, Noah Freeman, and I am with my usual co host, Matthew Lukens.
What's up?
Normally, we'll be going live every Tuesday evening at 8:30 p.m., but if you miss us live, you can subscribe to various networks. You can listen on your own time. Check out our Twitter and Facebook at The Hoosier Sound and subscribe. All of our information is in our website, thehoosiersound.com. All right, Hoosier Nation, it is time for some sports talk. But first, as always, Matt, what is your memorable monologue for this week in IU sports?
See, when I was trying to come up with a memorable monologue this week, there wasn't much that I could come up that was very positive. And you know what? The season has been great, and I think the seasons for most sports have been fantastic. But as a podcast, we mostly focus on men's football and men's basketball, and that's for good reason because they're the two biggest sports here at IU. And when I was thinking about the future of the men's football program after our heartbreaking loss to Michigan State, I couldn't help but feel like the last couple weeks of optimism have been met with some rather it's like getting hit in the face with a pan, but expecting the pan to hit you in the face anyway, and yet it still hurts. Like I expected us to lose to Michigan State because Michigan State's got better athletes than us. Michigan State's got a better coach. Michigan State has had 2 weeks to prepare. But it's the loss still hurt because I felt like IU had a chance to do something big, and we blew it yet again. And I'm not even going to go into the stats yet. We're going to do a whole segment where we go into the stats, and I'm sure Noah's going to pull some fancy stuff out of his butt. But just the feeling of the game, it felt like we were the ones who were beaten by Arizona State. We were the ones who were in a close game with Utah, not Utah State. Not the ones that have pretty much casually strolled through 3 opponents, one of which just held Louisville to 3 points, right? Like, I felt like we were on a roll, and it's like we got scared to play Michigan State. As we walked out of that tunnel, we were all fired up. We were sitting there on the sidelines. We looked and turned over, and they're sitting there with their helmets on. They look across the way, and they see Brian Lewerke. They see Mike D'Antonio. They see all the Michigan State. They see the green. They see the Spartan logo, and they went, "Ah, crap! We can't beat them. They're better than us." And then we were down 14-0 within the first half of the first quarter, and it was like we've already dug ourselves a hole, and it felt like every single bounce, every single 50-50, 50-50 ball, as they say in soccer, every 50-50, could go one way, could go the other, went to Michigan State in the first half, and yet we were still only down 14.5. Actually, barring an awful defensive possession, we would have been down 7 at the half. And, a miraculous interception, pick 6, we're tied at halftime. We played Michigan State pretty evenly, but we were down 14.5. And guess what the end of the game was? Down 14. That was the difference in the game, the bad start. And it felt like our offense just couldn't get anything done. And yeah, we score 14 points and we make it a game in the fourth quarter. But then the first play of the drive, after we made it a 7-point game, is a 70-yard touchdown run. And sure, we had some calls go against us. We had Marcelino Ball, of course, most notably gets the targeting call, which you can argue whether that was right or not. Personally, I think Noah and I agree that was the right call. It's a bit harsh, but it's the right call. But it's still disappointing. And it again, IU football comes up short in a big game. And it's, yes, we are historically the worst team in the FBS, but like, there's got to be, like, like the mean, right? There has to be some time we just get to 500, right? Like like we're going to have a good year, right? Like the years and years and years of us going 3-9 and 2-10 and 4-8. Like those years will come up with years that we go 9-3 and 7-5. Like and I look at the schedule, and I see David in the Twitter asked a question about who do you think is our most likely upset, and my answer to that is none of them. Now, after that showing with Michigan State, we look scared to play anybody. We don't look like a team. We look like a defense and an offense that can only throw about 5 yards through the air. Ramsey averaged 4.6 yards per pass, yards per attempt. Sorry, 4.6 yards per attempt. There's some teams that run the ball further per attempt than we were throwing the ball. We weren't throwing the ball down the field at all. You weren't stretching the defense. They were putting 8 in the box in us, and we weren't throwing more than 10 yards down the field. We took 2. We on the first drive, we did a wheel route to Reese Taylor, and Ramsey lost it over him just slightly, and we never run the play again. He was wide open. Wide open. We run that one more time, and they have to make sure that they get that play right. And that opens up space for our wide receivers underneath if you want to throw the short passes. I just I I was fully optimistic going into this week, hoping that we wouldn't be afraid to play Michigan State. And we looked nothing but afraid to play Michigan State. We looked outclassed. We looked like, honestly, we looked like a MAC team playing Michigan State.
That was quite a memorable monologue.
Yeah.
I think we all know how Matt feels after all that.
It's disappointing, right? Like I grew up watching Tim Tebow and the Florida Gators, then Jameis Winston and the Florida State Seminoles. I know what a good college football team looks like. I know what the fans are like. I know what the atmosphere is like. I've been to games when they were both playing, right? Like I understand what this is like, and we have 2 of the 3 of those. Whether you like it or not, if we pack the stadium, we have a great atmosphere in there. And I think with the enclosed stadium, it makes it even better. It actually feels like a college football atmosphere. 2, we have a fan base. Like, we have the atmosphere. We have people who actually care about IU football. We have people asking us questions on Twitter. There's podcasts of people that talk about IU football. This is not Old Dominion, who, by the way, beat Virginia Tech. Good job to them. That's why they came in my head.
By
Richmond.
14.
This is not, we're not Youngstown State, right? Like we have a base of supporters. We're a big school. Like we have 2 of the 3. We just need the product on the field, and the product on the field hasn't been there historically for IU football. And it blows my mind how a school with such rich history in basketball can't seem to figure it out in the football field. That's all.
That's all. Almost 10 minutes later. But I agree with most of what Matt said. I think I've got some optimism still in there for IU and some other points to talk about with a lot of the points that he brought up. But I'm gonna twist it at least another way and do some more positive, I guess, updates. One of them is a little weird. Updates in relation to at least IU sports. And I'm going to turn to IU soccer for a second. We haven't mentioned them in a couple episodes, but of course they're on a 7-game winning streak after losing their opening game to the 3rd best team in the nation at the time at Wake Forest. They're 1-0 in conference play, and they were supposed to be playing Northwestern right now, but the game got postponed to tomorrow night at 7 p.m. So if you were worried about watching the soccer game and us, which I'm sure there were many of you that were worried about watching our show and and the soccer game at the same time, but some good stats for soccer. So they're averaging 3 goals per game. And if you don't know much about soccer, that's pretty good, especially when 5 out of your 8 opponents you've played are ranked opponents. They're also only giving up 0.57 goals per game. So IU soccer, scoring a lot, not giving up anything. 5 out of our 8 matches have been shutouts. And of course, only our one loss gets it there. But then there was only 2 matches out of our 7 wins where we have only given up at least a goal. And of course, like we talked about, we've beat 4 ranked opponents out of the 5 that we've played. So IU soccer still doing well. I believe they will keep doing well for the rest of the season. And which, at least if we ever need something positive to talk about every episode, there's a good chance that IU soccer will be something to at least have a small glimpse of positivity within our hour or less episode. But moving on to a post IU basketball player, Freddie McSwain Jr. He's going to be in the upcoming NBA G League draft on October 20th. So we wish him all the best in finding a team there. And then I found this a little weird. Matt probably also found this a little weird. So Isaiah Stewart, obviously a New York guy that knows Thomas Bryant. We've talked about him a bunch on the episode. He's now playing at La Lumiere with Keon Brooks, but he's visiting Kentucky this weekend. Okay, that wouldn't be too bad. But Kentucky was not on his final 6. UK was not a team that was in his final 6 when he announced that. So I don't know, Matt. What do you think about Isaiah Stewart taking a visit to someone that he has already said he is not thinking about?
That tells me, as Titus and Tate call it on the One Shining Pod. If you don't know who that is, go check out One Shining Pod, the Ringer podcast. But Coach Cal has dropped the bag, and Isaiah Stewart's home. And Isaiah Stewart's going to be on campus in Kentucky, and I fully expect Isaiah Stewart to commit to Kentucky because it's not often that you see somebody add an official visit to a list of 6. That means now 2 of the schools on the list of 6 aren't going to be getting an official visit. And I am assuming that one is probably us, and another one is probably, I think Syracuse was his other one. I think that was low on his list as well.
That or I don't even know why Washington was there. So maybe.
Yeah, but he already took an official visit to Washington.
True, yeah. So. He might be using because he already visited IU since he's kind of close. That could be. We've talked about the visits for some people before, whether you use your official visit for someplace farther because obviously you get the free travel versus the closer venue you could go. He did visit IU at least in June, so obviously that was a while ago. He's not, of course, he's not someone that we think IU is his top choice for. We'll put it that way. But
yeah, this also, by the way, I just had this. I think this also tells me how far in Archie's putting all his chips in on Trey Jackson Davis.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a sign to me that we're out of the race for Isaiah Stewart and that we've pulled out of the race because there's not often that a recruit's going to go back and add somebody to his list unless he feels like he's not a priority for one of the schools that he put on his list.
Yeah,
so
which is why I even brought it up because I mean, honestly, I don't think him not coming to IU, even if we got him, that I was like, oh, that'd be great, but I didn't. It's not a necessarily a good or bad thing because I think the people we're going after are the people that we want and would help this IU team. But let's get into recapping a little more of this Michigan State team because Matt, of course, gave his overall view of how he felt, and we all know how Matt feels after 13 minutes of Matt. But first, I do want to, and I know Matt was there. I wasn't able to be there, but it did start to fill up by the end, but I was a little surprised at why the alumni side has been lacking in attendance this whole year. I don't know why necessarily, because usually it's the alumni and parent side that all of the fans are usually at, and the student section is usually the one that doesn't have as many people. But this year it's been the complete opposite. Especially even at UVA, students had there were more students in attendance, or more students on the student side. The really hot game against Ball State, student side was basically full throughout the entire middle, and then the student side was more full than it was for the alumni. So I don't know. I just think it's weird that that's happening.
The student section was almost as full as it was for the Ohio State game last year.
Yeah.
Which, if anybody knows, it was basically, we had people sitting behind the band, which if you're in the band, you understand never happens. So up above the band, and then the corner, and then the other corner, the student overflow was also partially full, which never happens. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was really cool. Like I said, we had a great turnout. It was a great atmosphere. A lot of people arriving late, but I feel like that had a lot to do with, they probably spent all day tailgating, and so they're probably packing stuff up and taking a long time to get back into the stadium. So, but it did fill in. It did fill in. We marched out there for pregame. I was like, "There's no one here," and
Yeah,
then
and then
literally 2 minutes after kickoff, I'm like, "Oh, there's lots of people here." So
no one knew what to do at the time for all of day because we usually never have a home game and in the evening. No one knew what to do with all their time all day
right,
for the entire
right.
day.
Right. Last year, I think the only evening game we had was the Ohio State game, and we had classes that day. So, like,
Yep, it was Thursday,
yep.
first week of school. So, but okay, let's get into some of the crux of this. I think, and I think everyone thinks, it kind of felt like okay, the defense gave up a touchdown at the beginning of the game. Happens. Everyone's getting in. Michigan State's coming out fire. That's okay. But I really think IU never historically does well against ranked opponents when they go down early, especially by double digits, let alone 2 touchdowns. So I really think the not necessarily the nail in the coffin, but I think really the conclusion was drawn from most of the from most everyone after the pick six. So it was a bad throw from Ramsey. He had to Stevie Scott had to go behind him, but Stevie, he is a freshman. Half of it was Ramsey's fault, I believe. Half of it was Stevie's fault because you just don't tip a ball upward like that. When you try and grab a ball, you don't hit the ball in a way that it's going to go up multiple feet in the air, have a lot of hang time, and let anyone anywhere try and grab the ball, which is obviously what happened. And it was a very easy pick. For Michigan State, and that was also, if you remember, we were driving pretty well for that drive, and I honestly think that was a probable 14-point swing because I think IU at least would have scored at least a field goal, but I think the momentum was pushing them to get into the end zone. So that was at least it could have been a 14-point swing, which is huge in that game. Were you gonna say something?
No, I wasn't going to say anything. I was just going to say, like, yeah, I was going to agree with you pretty much. Like, that play for Stevie is more of like a reaction play. I feel like he just sees that at the last second. Ramsey just can't loft the ball up like that. He overthrows him, and he puts Stevie in an impossible position of you taught to try to make that catch.
Mhm.
Like, because if he lets that go, he doesn't know where the defender is because he's
Yep.
turning around to see it. So he put Stevie in an impossible position. I don't blame Stevie at all. That's on Peyton. You throw that away. You throw it at Stevie's feet because Stevie's not going to be able to keep that ball from, he's either going to catch it and take a lick or he's going to tip it up and, it's going to go the other way for 6, which that's what ended up happening.
Yeah. The weird part, though, and I think I attribute this to mostly the play calling, and I'm going to have my shorter, memorable monologue later about this particular person, but I thought it was weird how there was really only, what was it? I think like 2 attempted long passes. And I mean long pass for Peyton Ramsey that's more than 10 or 15 yards. Because we at least okay, so at the beginning of the game, of course, we had the long bomb to where Reese Taylor had a jump on the defender and was wide open. Ramsey missed him, and honestly, I don't blame him because he hasn't had practice in a game. He's never given opportunities to throw that long ball, but uh, he did it again. It didn't get there, but honestly, they've just gone away. And those receivers were open, but we never went back to even attempting more than a 5-yard pass almost the entire game, which just try and get up on them. Try and see if you can get a jump and a score. Because if you get one long pass, which we at least had one with WAP later towards the game, but if you can just get one long pass, that's just a huge momentum swing. Michigan State knew that we weren't going to throw the ball far down, which is why they were able to use literally 7 or 8 people sometimes to clog up the middle, and why we never had any run success. Which that's just something else I'm going to get into. I also thought this was weird with some more of the play calling. 3rd and 1, QB sneak. Okay, makes sense. We didn't get there, but we got to 4th and inches. So Peyton Ramsey lines up in the shotgun. That was a huge question mark for me. I don't know about you, Matt, but 3rd and 1, QB sneak, 4th and inches. We're in the shotgun, and of course we turned it over because for some reason we were 4 or 5 yards off of the ball.
I don't know if Mike DeBoer's lost it or he was just drunk during the game.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what their game plan was. I just don't understand. You have the number one rushing defense in the country. And what do you try to? You don't even try to run it around them. You don't even try to break contain. You just run it straight down the middle for every running play. Then, okay, we can't run the ball. So why don't we just basically run the ball while trying to pass it? So every time we pass it, let's just get 4 yards passing. That's great. Until the defense clamps up on that and you do nothing else for the rest of the game. And besides Whop failure, God bless him, taking one to the house basically.
He
Or
stopped a blowout.
yeah, he stopped. Yeah, he did. That's exactly what he did. You just took the words on that. He stopped the blowout. That's exactly what Whop did. Whop single-handedly kept us in this game. I told you I was on the Whop train, by the way.
Kind
At
of.
the beginning of the year.
Well, I double-handedly kept us in the game. We're getting to the defense later, but yes.
But I don't understand the play calls.
Don't get into it too much because I'm going to mention something.
I know.
About it too,
I know. I'm sorry.
And we don't want to reminisce too much because we want to get to some other topics as well.
Fire Mike DeBoer. That's all.
I was also confused. So I under Penix. He's a freshman
repeat what you
under
just
the
said?
big lights. Sorry, I said I understand not playing Penix. You got Ramsey, who's a veteran who's been in a lot of these situations. Penix, a freshman who hasn't done that. But
Right.
after three and outs, three and outs, not even where they got 1 first down. They got 0 first downs 3 times in a row. And then after they had 3 and outs, and then they punted after only gaining 16 yards. How much worse can that get? Why don't you throw Penix in there and see what he can do? Literally, if you're going 3 and out, that's almost the same thing as giving them the ball away, because 3 plays, you go literally nowhere and you're punting the ball back to them. Why not give Penix the ball? Why not see if he can go down the field? If they intercept it, you were going 3 and out anyway, and you passed a long ball to go to an interception. It's the same thing as a punt. I don't know why we didn't get to see if Penix could open up the field more, spread it out. Maybe they spread the defense. Stevie Scott could get something going, because that segues into my running back. I don't blame Stevie Scott for getting 26 total yards of rushing, because he never really had the chance to run the ball. He would start running the ball. He would get the ball once or twice. He would go about 1 or 2 yards most of the time, and then they would never let him actually try and get into a rhythm. They would just go away. All right, it's not working. Okay, we're going to run the ball once, go straight away from it. That's it. And then, I also was very confused. Ronnie Walker, they brought him in for one play. Why?
Yeah, where's the change of pace? Where was the change of pace? If Stevie Scott isn't working, try to run around them, right?
Yeah.
Or let Stevie try to run. There was not even one run that was to the right side of the line that went even outside the left guard.
You want to know you want to know where Ronnie Walker ran for his one play when he's the athletic guy that's supposed to be quick and jumping around people?
Oh, tell me it's at the goal line.
Well, oh yeah. Well, no, it wasn't. I mean, just up the middle.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So that, I don't blame the running backs, and I was kind of annoyed because I heard so many Michigan State fans. It's like, oh, this run defense is gonna just stop Stevie Scott, and they did, but it wasn't Stevie's fault that time. It was the play calling, because they never even tried to open any holes up. And yeah, the O-line had a very bad game. That they know it. That's not usual for them. I don't think the first 3 games they've had great games. I don't think that's going to be a trend that the O-line continues. I'll be worried if it happens against Rutgers, and Rutgers is able to get pressure. But otherwise, they never even had a chance to get into a rhythm, because the plays were just so obscure. They were letting IU was passing, but they weren't. They were running it, and what is the O-line supposed to do? They had a bad game, but yeah.
This is going to be the best defensive front we play. Ohio State's really good, but they've just lost Nick Bosa. Yeah. So we're gonna play them. They're a little bit under their average. This Michigan State is obviously the best number 1 run defense in the country.
Yeah,
and it's not even close.
Even if Nick Bosa comes back, it's definitely not in 2 weeks when we play them. Yeah, running backs, wide receivers. we both touched on both of the points I kind of wanted to talk about for a little bit. Watt Fillier, stepping up in front of injured Luke Timian. Yeah, Luke Timian was sitting on the sideline. What can we say about Wap? He stepped up. He literally, like we said before, kept us in the game on offense because he was the only one that was ever able to do something. Then also, Reese Taylor. Why did we stop using him? He had the jump at the beginning. He had the speed against a lot of these cornerbacks. These were not good cornerbacks. This was not a good secondary. We talked about this. The announcers talked about this. Michigan State fans knew this. We didn't take advantage of these secondaries. And I don't know why we didn't keep trying to play Reese Taylor farther along 5 or 10 yards because he was beating a lot of those speeds and everything. Even if that, we never even tried to give him a ball on like an out or him coming around to sweep it and give it. It was anyway.
Yeah,
Okay.
another thing about wide receivers too. I just want to add, where is Nick Westbrook and Donovan Hale?
Nick, well, yeah.
Where are they? Why aren't we throwing to them? They're our two best wide receivers, and they have like 3 receptions a game.
And they've got 6 inches and 50 pounds of muscle weight on every cornerback that they play.
I'm serious. Like, just toss it up there. Like, why are we afraid to throw it? We threw it like that to Simi Cobbs last year.
Yep. And it was the same thing. The defense got the ball in inside the 10-yard line. We, out of our 4 plays that we or I guess our 3 plays we took to try and score, we threw the ball into the end zone once. That's it. We went backwards every time we were inside. When we got that stop that the defense worked hard to get and got the ball, literally they gave the ball to the offense with less than 10 yards to score.
It's like we were afraid to play Michigan State. This is what I'm telling you. We were afraid to try to do anything that would make us look bad, and it ended up making us look bad.
Here is my final thought on the offense and Mike DeBoer. So I have been someone publicly giving Mike DeBoer the benefit of the doubt coming into the season because, again, this was last year was his first year. None of the players were him. None of the schemes were himself. Maybe he was just trying to do too many different things than what he was supposed to. But nothing has changed. Good coaches change their play calling to the personnel, even when it isn't their own players, aka Archie Miller this past season. Mike DeBoer hasn't even attempted to change one single thing. I wouldn't mind if he, even in this game, changed something and it just got worse. Like what he did, it just ended up actually backfiring, but at least he tried something. He does literally the exact same thing, even from last year, with different personnel, and it doesn't even attempt to change something throughout the game, let alone throughout the entire season. Doesn't matter who we play or what their defensive scheme is. It's the same 2 or 3 types of plays, and that's about it. So, okay, soapbox done. Longer about Michigan State and our offense done. Let's actually talk a little bit about good with this game because the defense was actually pretty good with this game. They were the ones keeping the offense in the game the entire time. And honestly, we were leaning on the defense way too much because every time we needed to stop, we asked the defense, please help us, give us more chances. They actually did, yet we still didn't do anything with them. The only part that I'm going to, and I haven't faulted Tom Allen too much in his first year and a quarter. The only thing I fault him for this game with the defensive part is, so throughout at least most of the first half and beginning of second half, Lewerke would go to basically just one receiver for multiple plays in a row, that mainly like Cody White and a couple other players. But usually when they went to the same receiver play after play after play, and they kept getting catch after catch after catch, moving them all the way down the field, almost literally. But for some reason, our top cornerbacks would never get adjusted to fix that before the drive was over and they scored. So we would have the Michigan State receiver, just one receiver, tearing up our defense, and we would have our rookie, and I mean rookie just because like red shirt, sophomores or freshman defense, whatever, rookies playing these top receivers that are being out physical, outmanned, and not even having any help. That was the only part that I had for Tom Allen in the defense this game, because I was surprised that it was the same thing all game where we didn't actually get to try and put some of our more physical cornerbacks on some of these receivers when they were manhandling us. But yes, Marcelino Ball had his play that people will say is controversial. I do agree with Matt. It was technically the right call to the letter of the law, whether you agree with the rule or not. It's kind of like Clay Matthews in the recent weeks. Same thing, whether you agree or not, the refs have been calling that correctly. It's the rule that needs to be questioned. But I think everyone is just mad at, and I even put this on Twitter. I think everyone is just mad that there was one play that Peyton Ramsey had his head hit with a Michigan State defender's head, and his head got knocked around, and there was not even a roughing the passer or a personal foul called on him. So I think that's what people were more upset about, which I understand. But otherwise, Marcelino Ball was holy cow. If we could have that Marcelino Ball like we expected every game, man, that was incredible.
Yep.
Obviously gave up that one big play, but 4 turnovers and the crucial stops they gotten against a top 25 team, they did their job. Defense was actually doing pretty solid this game for the most part. 2 quick notes: special teams, Ja'Shawn Harris, great returning as usual. Yeah, but then of course the terrible, terrible, terrible read for that touchdown conversion for the field goal that I don't know what IU was doing. I think they were literally sleeping or twiddling their thumbs or doing something. That field goal conversion for a touchdown was just, oh my good. Another point of the game. The team that was up by 14 and 21 points were becoming creative, but not the team that was down 14 or 21 points. Anyway, let's put that to rest. Let's talk about Hoosier Hysteria for a little bit. Not too much about Hoosier Hysteria because we'll probably get into it more next week since it'll actually happen. But just some quick info. Parking lots open at 12:30. The doors will open at 12, and the entire thing starts at 4:30. So it's a little earlier than normal. I like that. Most people like that because people can get there, they can travel, they can leave without it being too late. Rutgers says yes. The Rutgers game will be on since it's a noon kickoff. So I assume they would have all of the same video feeds and stuff around Assembly Hall to watch it. And then they are going to have it on the big screen, just like in previous years. But at least this year, we're not playing a Michigan or a Michigan State or a team that we will all be chewing our nails by the end. And also at least simultaneously, all of us booing for most of the ref calls by the end of the game. But in addition, IU women's basketball, that's going to be great for them. Not just about men's basketball. The women's team, they're going to raise their NIT banner. That's going to be a special moment, especially because I think it's going to be a humongous crowd. Matt and I were discussing this earlier. We were trying to remember all of the IU basketball players, the men's team, all of the recruits that were going to be there. Hoosier Hysteria is becoming very popular for the recruits, as a good thing and as it should, because we're also using Hoosier Hysteria as a recruiting tool much better than in recent years, because walking across the court, that's not announcing them, but it's basically announcing them. We definitely have Keon Brooks, Trace Jackson Davis, and then we also have Jamius Ramsey that is in this class. I don't remember who specifically, but I know we also have a few other recruits just visiting in some of the later classes down the road. Listening to the podcast that Jeremy Gray did with Jared Morris and Alex Bozich, they normal for the most part, shooting contests, dunking, coaches addressing the crowd, and then there's supposed to be kind of some surprises. They're leaving some things up for our imagination. Literally, from what Jeremy Gray said, the senior associate athletic director at IU. So it's supposed to be cool. They're changing it up a little bit because we don't want the same. It gets a little stale if you do the same thing all the time. But also talking about the locker room, because that was supposed to be done, and obviously he said he can't say anything, but quote, the locker room will take a backseat to no one. So a revamped locker room, as he hinted at with these top recruits. We should have one of the biggest crowds as of recent memory, probably only maybe second, hopefully at least second to the 2012 Hoosier Hysteria, where IU was preseason ranked number 1. We should have a huge crowd. Everyone gets to see Romeo for the first time. Before we move on to our Rutgers preview and then some questions, Matt, do you have any last second thoughts about Hoosier Hysteria?
Go. It's going to be fun. Gates open at 2. It's free. Bring canned good is recommended. And yeah, it should be fun. 3-point contest, dunk contest, always fun. This is
Get
actually my first year being able to go, so I'm excited.
Oh wow,
As I think, well, for my first 2 years, we had the away trip for band,
that's true.
and then last year the alto section here at IU decided we all wanted to go to Gatlinburg for a weekend, and it just happened to be that weekend.
Sure.
So I haven't been able to go, so I'm super duper excited to go this year.
Yeah, and it'll be cool to see like also even more people like the 3-point contest. We get to see Evan Fitzner and like Romeo in with all the rest of the people that we've seen before. So it'll be it'll be sad like for like because they like to do the men's and the women's part. It'll be sad that we don't get to see Tyra and Tyra won't get to go head to head with everyone else. But it should be a fun time. If you're not going, Big Ten BTN Plus, get the from what I've heard, the best way to do it is kind of buy the 1 month or like subscribe to BTN Plus for 1 month, cancel it, wait for IU basketball to have a lot of those games later. If you can't go to Assembly Hall, do it again for another month or so and then cancel it. And then you'll be good. It'll save a lot of money, but you get to see a lot of all the stuff. So yes, it is on BTN Plus though, if you are not going to be in Bloomington that weekend. But let's go to our Rutger preview for this Saturday. I don't know how much Matt has, but I'm just kind of going to read off a bunch of stats. And a lot of these stats, and this is this year's stats, is going to blow your mind because Rutger is not, it's hard to believe, but they so far are worse than everyone thought they would be.
They might be the worst power. No, not they might. They are the worst Power 5 team.
Because I'm going to get to this in a second, because usually there is one that is consistently the worst, but Rutger lost to that team. But Saturday kickoff at noon, like we said, it's on BTN. So if you're waiting to go to Hoosier Hysteria, which I don't recommend unless you want to sit in the nosebleeds, it's on BTN. But there's a 17.5-point spread in Indiana's favor. That's the best spread in IU's favor against an opponent on the road in over 20 years. I don't remember what the specific number was, but that's a huge spread for IU's favor, which is nice to see even after a loss. The ESPN matchup predictor 82.4% IU, 17.6 against Rutgers. Okay, Rutgers this season beat Texas State 35-7. Ooh, great. They beat Texas State. Then they lost to Ohio State 52-3. They lost to Kansas. Hold on. First of all, they lost to Kansas, which is usually the worst Power 5 football team ever, every year. Even Kansas fans admit it. They lost to Kansas. They not only lost, but they lost 55-14. They lost by 41 points to Kansas. And then they went and lost to Buffalo, which at least recently Buffalo has been making some bowl games, but they still lost to Buffalo 42-13. Rutgers is scoring an average of 16.3 points per game and giving up 39 points per game. Now, take out that Texas State game, 35-7. They are scoring 10 points per game and giving up 49.67 points per game. They are giving up 50 points per game on average if you take out the Texas State game. And these are this isn't like you're playing Ohio State and Michigan State and Michigan and Penn State. You played Ohio State, sure, but then you played Kansas and Buffalo. You played okay. Let's get to the offense though. They're averaging 278.8 yards per game, and it's almost about equal for passing versus running. The stats that I'm going to read in a second don't really go to that, but they're about half and half for running versus passing. Now, they're QBs. Artur Sitowski and Giovanni Rossino. Those are the two quarterbacks that, first of all, Artur Sitowski was supposed to be a guy coming in that was supposed to help Rutgers at least get out of some of the hump that they have been doing. But to say the least, I guess that was a generous statement. A very big hump that they've had to get out of. Yeah. He's completed 39 of 80 pass attempts, which is 48.8%, and only passed for 329 yards. This is after 4 games. That's bad, but here's this. He's thrown 1 touchdown and 7 interceptions. 1 touchdown to 7 interceptions. That is the wrong end of a ratio. Then Giovanni Rossino has come in because he's been doing so poorly. 24 to 48. So he's been literally 50% accuracy, which, yes, 50% even in college is on the lower side than it is the upper side, to say the least. Passed for 233 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So our quarterbacks that we are facing have thrown 1 touchdown and 8 interceptions. For IU,
That's a great sign.
that's a great sign for at least Indiana.
I'm just gonna put. You can throw out all the stats you want now, but I'm just gonna tell you this: if it's within 21 points at the end of the game, I am very disappointed and worried for the rest of the season.
I agree.
This is the worst team we will play
It
all
wasn't
year.
supposed to be, but it will be.
It will be. I think Ball State is much better than this team.
Mm-hmm.
And this team is supposed to have Power 5 athletes on it.
Yep.
Rutgers is in shambles. They're the worst athletic program in the Big Ten. And there's a reason why we call them Rutger with a lowercase r, Noah. Come on, get it right on Twitter. Because they lost the S, because they lose everything else.
Mm-hmm. But these QBs are averaging they're averaging 15 and a half completions for 32 attempts per game. They're only completing 15 and a half passes every single game.
That's painful. That's like
That's
you're playing in the SEC West and you're Arkansas painful. Like
that's 4 completions a quarter that you get. That's not even like how long you. That's just you catch the ball and you could catch into the backfield and lose.
That's even worse if you put it that way. Oh no. Oh, that stinks.
Yeah. So yeah. And with those completions, they're averaging 4.39 yards per catch. This is not running. This is passing.
Oh man.
But speaking about their running game, this is not much better, but compared to those stats, their running game is much better than their passing.
It can't get much worse than their passing stats. So,
Raheem Blackshear, that's going to be the main guy. He's a sophomore back who's carried it already for 55 times, 264 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's also received the ball, which I'll get to that in a second. He's the main guy. The Jonathan Hillman, a senior guy who's carried 43 times for 170 yards, 3 touchdowns. They kind of split the load. Basically, they're going to be the main 2 guys. Raheem's going to be in there most of the time. Jonathan's going to come in a bunch of times as well. Jonathan looks like he's the guy that's trying to punch it into the end zone, more of that third down kind of back. But Raheem is going to get at least the majority of the carries. But look to see both of them on the field a lot of the time. And then to spell both of them, Isaiah Pacheco, freshman back. He's the guy that everyone was like, oh, you get to see Stevie Scott versus Isaiah. The stats don't compare whatsoever. He has 26 carries for 102 yards. And I mean, like, Big Ten has been previewing this as like the freshman back versus the freshman back on their commercials as these two going at it against each other. And 26 for 112 yards. Stevie had almost twice that in one game and add 2 touchdowns to that as well. So they're averaging 37 carries. So they're literally averaging more carries per game than the QBs are attempting to throw the ball for.
Nice.
Yeah. And they are also averaging, okay, you see they're running the ball a lot, but no, they're only averaging 3.7 yards per carry. They do have 5 touchdowns, though, so that's where most of their touchdowns come from. In total, for their offense, the entire team has only scored 8 touchdowns for all 4 games. So 2 touchdowns a game. 6 of them are offensive touchdowns. They have gotten 1 fumble return for a touchdown, and they have gotten 1 blocked field goal for a touchdown. Let's not have our recent memory for these block field goals. Let's not at least have Rutgers exploit that one part. But receivers, not too much to talk about. 4 of them get the ball most of the time, literally almost equal stats all across the board. But one of those 4 is Raheem Blackshear. He, as the running back, so he's kind of that dual threat running back. He's caught the only passing touchdown for this season so far. And in total, he has half of the offensive touchdowns.
Oh
and
my
then
God.
Also Jonathan Hillman has the other half. So 2 people have scored all of the touchdowns for Rutgers.
You know what? I think Ben asked a question on Twitter about is the Marcelino Ball, him missing half a game, like gonna matter next game? I'll tell you this, Ben. No, it's not, because Rutgers is trash. and they're
I'm not
really
done
bad.
yet. I'm not even done yet.
I know you're not done yet, but I'm putting it in the question. I'm just saying they're trash. It won't matter. We could put our third strings out there, and they might, they might lose, but they'd lose in a very close game, and that's our third strings. So
And that's saying something for IU. But
yeah,
okay, offense in total, they have given up 12 turnovers in the first 4 games. They are averaging 3 turnovers per game, 4 fumbles, 8 interceptions. And that also means they also did not give up one against Buffalo. So, really, in 3 games, they have given up 12 turnovers. 6 of them were against Kansas. They gave the ball up to Kansas 6 times.
times to Kansas. They've played. They have played the biggest joke of a schedule.
Yep. And they have given up the biggest joke of stats. So I'm not making these up. I'm not making these stats up, by the way. Okay. Defense. They are allowing 434.3 yards per game. They do have a fumble return for a touchdown. They have gotten 3 interceptions and 2 fumbles, so 5 turnovers total. So they can get about a turnover, a little over 1 per game. So they are getting a few turnovers, and they didn't get any against Ohio State, of course. So that in 3 games they've gotten 5. So sizable for at least the defense. They're just obviously giving up a lot of points and a lot of yards. But they've only gotten 5 total sacks too. So if our offensive line has the wake up call they did last week, I honestly, which game was it? Was it Ball State that? Yeah, it was Ball State that Ramsey got rushed twice. I would even venture to see if before our backups go in, I would even think that Ramsey gets rushed once or 0 times from this defensive line, and that's more of the strong point for this Rutgers defense. But more of looking at the game itself, if you're going to look for players that Rutgers might be able to make plays for, linebacker Trevor Morris has gotten 37 total tackles in all 4 games, which is averaging
That's not bad.
9.25 tackles per game. So he's the guy getting almost 10 tackles a game. So great for him. Then you got Devontae Roberts and Max Anthony, who have gotten about 25 or so tackles each. Then our DBs, the only 2 guys you really got to look for, they're about equal, so you don't have one better than the other. Probably obviously play on opposite sides of the field. You got Avery Young and Damon Hayes. They both have 20 tackles, but Damon Hayes has 1 interception. So that's about it. Those are not bad stats, but those, when you think about how long the opposing teams have had the ball, that is pretty bad. But there's some sign of life with the Rutgers special teams. Their kicker is pretty good because he's gotten 8 for 8 point afters and he's 3 for 3 on field goals.
Nice to say perfect. So good for him. They got to have some shining light, right?
He's the if you don't count if you count their touchdowns as 6 points, he is the leading scorer on the team.
That hurts. That hurts my soul. That's like a Cleveland Browns stat.
Yeah, their kicker has scored the most points on the team out of 3 players.
That's painful.
Let's wrap this up with some questions. There's some pretty quick questions too. Okay, respectable Adam, longtime listener. Do you think #IU football will reestablish the run game or air it out? Personally, I think it's going to be both because we're going to have the time to. I think we're going to want to reestablish the run at least first, just to get it back in our system, know that we can run the ball, and then, or at least I really, really hope so, Matt, that we at least try and air the ball out with Ramsey too, and then see what Penix can also do. But what do you think?
I think Mike DeBoer's a stubborn son of a bitch. And I think that he is not going to throw the ball more than 10 yards down the field. And I am sure we're going to reestablish the run game. And I expect Stevie Scott to have about 125 yards rushing.
Before he gets pulled too, man.
Yes.
That's going to be before he gets pulled. That's not playing all 4 quarters.
Yes, with this offensive line he's running behind, and this awful of a running defense, yeah, Stevie Scott's going to have himself a game.
Yeah, and also run versus air attack. Rutgers defense, same thing. They've been giving up about the same amount of yards rushing versus passing, so they're both equally bad. And yeah, our PG show, Matt, you can see how our PG show has hurt Matt's feelings, how IU football has hurt Matt's feelings.
I apologize, guys. It's IU football has rotted my core. So
All right, David asked, which Matt mentioned earlier, but we'll talk about it for a brief second. Which upset is most likely to actually happen? Penn State, Ohio State, Iowa, or Michigan? Now, I think, at least for us, now we're talking about which upset is most likely to happen. And if going off of Matt, I know he doesn't think any of these will happen, but let's look at it this way. Yes, we lost to Michigan State. It's a bad to think that we were supposed to lose to this game. Like going into the season, we're like, okay, Michigan State probably lost. It's bad to think of it like that, but it was reality. Now, I think there are 5 more very reasonable wins that IU can have. I don't think it'll happen, but I would not be surprised if IU went 8-4. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm obviously leaning more towards that not happening, but I wouldn't be surprised because we've got still Maryland, Purdue, Rutgers. So we've got those 3, and then our other 2, Iowa and Minnesota. And right now, Minnesota is looking much worse than we thought the first 2 weeks. And Maryland just did the same thing teams have been doing to Rutgers, basically. So Minnesota's looking much worse. But I think out of these, Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan are arguably around the top 10 of the league. Iowa is about in the 30s, even though they've looked pretty good. So I think the most realistic is Iowa. I don't think that's much of a stretch. Of course, it's coming off of a week against Ohio. It's still homecoming. It's going to be a pretty full crowd because I think people are going to start getting over at least some of the loss, and they're going to expect at least Ohio State to come do that. We'll be 4-2 most likely by that time. There's a great chance to be 5-2, and we'll have to look up the stats when the last time IU was 5-2 kind of thing. So I think it'll be a good game, and that's the most likely to happen.
yeah, Iowa. I want to throw my hat in on a team that I think is a little bit overrated and not as good as people think they are. I think Penn State is a reasonable one.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're very one-dimensional, especially if with our defensive backs and our secondary, would be an interesting matchup against Trace McSorley. So I'd like to see that. I don't think that's the most likely. I think that's the second most likely. I agree with you that Iowa is the most likely upset of the ones left.
And I think it's even more realistic for an Iowa win than even it was against Michigan State. But we'll have to see where IU has played against Rutgers and Ohio State because, of course, we're going to expect Ohio to lose to Ohio State, but let's see how they play against them. Maybe they play them a lot closer than we think.
Maybe there's a miracle in Columbus coming.
Yeah. Who stole Matt's hat? We got a YouTube question from Michael. Who stole Matt's hat? Which, if you don't watch the live YouTube stream, Matt usually wears a hat. And then we got a last one from Duncan. Question for the end of the show. If we go 6-6 but lose to Purdue, is this season a success? Now, I think at least compared to last year, general statement, I think yes, just because we will go to a bowl game. I think just looking at it like that, I think it's more of a success than last year. Now, more of a success, I don't necessarily think means a success because I think losing to Purdue, at least at this point, will be not a good taste in our mouths at the very end of the season. I think IU has a great chance of going 5-7 this year. I also think the 6-6, it depends on who we lose to because if we lose against obviously those 4 teams that we mentioned, so Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, that's 4 losses. You add Purdue, like Duncan mentioned. So who's our other loss going to be to? And how bad is that loss going to be? Is it going to be to Iowa? That would be not the best, but those 6 losses are at least something that you would expect from an IU team. So what are your thoughts?
See, I'm in the boat that would be a failure.
I'm more of that too, but I just mean from compared to last year, at least we would make a bowl game.
No, I think it's a failure. Because this is not the best Purdue football team we've ever seen. It's at home.
Yep.
And it's a chance to go and have a winning record. Let's say if we're going in that game, we must be 6-5.
Yep.
And if we don't win that game, we don't beat our rival at home and get to a winning record and a better bowl game, it's an absolute and total failure.
Now, real quick, do you think it's a total failure if we're 7-4 and then lose to Rutgers? Or I mean, sorry,
Purdue.
Purdue.
No, I think it's a draw because it still sucks that we lost to Purdue, but we still have that winning record. But
Which we haven't
also,
had in a while.
which we haven't had in a very long time. So, one great thing, one really crappy thing equals a draw. But losing Purdue and only having a 6-6 season when you could have had a winning season, like winning regular season, it's just too much of a downer.
Yeah, and yeah, because also even if you went 7-5 or 7-5, you would have a winning season because you only get one bowl game anyway. So
Yeah.
But we talked much longer than we thought about this Michigan State game, but it's behind us. There were some good things to take away, and of course, a lot of bad things that we have already hashed out for way too long. But thank you all so much for joining us on our 55th show of the Hoosier Sound. Stay tuned through updates on Twitter at the Hoosier Sound, Facebook, and subscribe to us on YouTube, and visit our website at thehoosiersound.com so you can find all of our information regarding our podcast all in one place, as well as watch our live stream. You can watch our live stream on our main web page as well. As always, send us your questions as the audience, so be sure to comment on Twitter or YouTube, chat, send us a message at contact@thehoosiersound.com on what questions you have, and we'll get them on our next episode, because lately we've been getting 4 or 5 questions, which is great from you guys. Send them in even early, so maybe tomorrow you got a question for next week. Send them in. Lastly, if you enjoy the show, leave us a review. iTunes is usually the best place to do that, but tell a friend, share our links. That's usually how we grow our podcast. And of course, as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.
Check out the website. Peace.